Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm here with another deck profile. So today is going to be a Dungeon World deck featuring Demon Lords. So as of Blazing Overclash, they got some new support, and I think with their new support they could actually be quite a fun deck to play, and they got a lot of additional power. One of the new cards that they got is Havoc Demon Lord Wisdom, who I'm choosing to run as the buddy. He's mainly the reason why I think Demon Lord's got a huge buff, because he has the Chaos Territory ability, and he makes all of your Demon Lords size zeros. He also has another ability. When this card enters the field, call up to one Demon Lord or Chaos monster other than Wisdom from your drop zone by paying its call cost. Onto the deck. As such, I run 4 of the buddy. Next, I run 4 copies of Demon Lord Nil. So what she does is her call cost is put a Demon Lord from your drop zone into its soul and pay 2 gauge. When this card enters the field, put up to 1 Demon Lord spell from your deck into your hand and shuffle your deck. When this card attacks, you gain 1 life and draw a card, and then she has Penetrate, Double Attack, Soul Guard Hand as a Demon Lord. Next, I run 4 copies of Great Demon Lord of Thunderstorm Batzz. Call cost is pay 2 gauge. Then during your turn, this card on your field can't be destroyed. And then he has an act ability. If this card is on your center, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, call up to 1 size 3 Demon Lord from your deck into an open area by paying its call cost and shuffle your deck. That card becomes size 0 until it leaves the field. You can only use this ability once per turn. Because we have Wisdom, you could put Wisdom in the center, Batzz also in the center because of Chaos Territory, and still get Batz's effect, which makes him very good. Next, I run 2 copies of Water Lord of Lament for Demise Miserea. So this is an Omni Lord. This card kind of acts as the alternate win condition paired up with the impact. Call cost is put up to 2 cards from your drop zone into its soul and pay 2 gauge. Souls and Demon Lords on your field can't be dropped by your opponent's card effects. And then during your final phase, when you set an impact, you may get another attack phase. Use this ability only once per turn. And then at the beginning of each player's turn, deal 1 damage to your opponent. Next, I run 2 copies of CHAOS Radromal. When this card enters the field, put the top card of your deck into your gauge. Then, if this card entered the field by a card effect, draw a card. Next, I run 2 copies of CHAOS Van Glacier. So its call cost is pay a gauge and pay a life. If this card on the field would leave by your opponent's card effects, you could drop a hand and this card stays on the field. And then when this card attacks, if 2 or more original size 3 monsters are on your field for this turn, this card gets triple attack. And then on to the spells. Next, I run 2 copies of Unfreezing. So you pay a life, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 of them into your hand, and put the rest in the bottom. Looking at the top 3 cards and fishing for any one of those cards is more powerful than a generic draw effect. Next, I run 3 copies of Bonus Quest. So its cast cost is discard a size 2 or greater monster from your hand. What the card does is put the top card of your deck into your gauge, you gain a life and draw 2 cards. And then you can only play it once per turn. Next, I run 3 copies of Iris Lilac. So you can only cast this during your turn. Its cast cost is drop a soul of a card on your field. And then counter, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into the gauge. So this is basically doing what Unfreezing is doing, except its cast cost is a little bit harder by dropping a soul of a card on the field. Next, I run 3 copies of Magical Eyes Release. So you can only cast this if you have a Demon Lord on your field. Put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge and put a card from your opponent's gauge to their drop zone. This is a good way at gaining gauge. It eats up their gauge, and this card's also not hard locked once per turn. Next, I run 2 copies of Delusions Run Amok. So you can only cast this during each player's attack phase. Its cast cost is destroy a monster on your field, and then this card is basically a counter speed charge 4. Next, I run 2 copies of Recover Veil. So this is the anti-hand discard card. where if your opponent's trying to make you discard a card, you reveal this, pay 1 life, and then you just don't. And then it also has 2 counter speed abilities, which are both very good, which is either charge 2 gauge, or the next damage you take by an attack is reduced to 0. So it can be used to either gain more gauge, which the deck does like to use a lot of, or if you really feel like you need to use it as a defensive tool, it has that option as well. Next, I run 2 copies of Miracle Fighters. Its cast cost is choose an attribute of a card on your field and pay 1 gauge, and then look for up to 1 size 3 monster or item with the chosen attribute you declared in its cast cost, and basically you get to search your deck and add that to your hand and then shuffle your deck afterward. Next, I run 4 copies of Ice Emperor's Judgment. So you can only cast this card if you have a Demon Lord on your field. Its cast cost is pay 2 gauge, which is a little bit hefty, and part of the reason why we want to gain as much gauge as humanly possible. And then at counter speed, it has 2 effects. You could either destroy up to 2 cards on your opponent's field, so it could be monster, set spell, item, what be it, which is very strong. And then its other ability is the one you're probably going to be using more often than not, which is rest up to 2 cards on your opponent's field. Next, I run 3 copies of Demon Lord Castle in the Sky. So its cast cost is put 2 Demon Lords from your drop zone into its soul. It's a set spell. And what it does is if you call a Demon Lord other than from your hand, the call cost is reduced by 1 gauge. Then it has another ability at counter speed. If you have no monsters on your center, call a Demon Lord monster from this card's soul and put it into your center by paying its call cost. Most of the time, you're just really going to want to see this to reduce the gauge cost of your Demon Lords. But if your board is being attacked and you don't have anything in your center, then this helps stabilize your board state. Next, I run 3 copies of Great Spell's City of Devastation. This is just a really solid set spell that goes in conjunction with Great Spell Apocalypse. So when this card is set, put up to 1 spell with Apocalypse in its card name from your deck into your hand, then shuffle. And then it has an act ability. You may drop all souls from Mission Card of Judgment Great Spell Apocalypse on your field. If you do, gain 3 life. So speaking of Apocalypse, I run 3 copies of Mission Card of Judgment Great Spell Apocalypse. So its cast cost is the top 3 cards from your deck face down into its soul. And then it's a set spell. This card on your field can't be destroyed by effects of your opponent's cards. When a monster on your field is destroyed, put a card from this card's soul into the drop zone. And then when this card's soul becomes 0, draw a card. It combos with Great Spell City of Devastation to just drop all of the souls immediately and draw a card. So this acts as like a little bit of a draw engine. And then lastly, I run 2 copies of the Impact Darkness Final Mission card, World End. It's a set impact. When a Demon Lord on your field attacks, put the top card of your deck into its soul face down. At the end of the attack phase, if there are 5 or more cards in this card's soul, destroy all cards on your opponent's field and set their life to 1, and then destroy this card. That's it for the main deck. I do have sort of a work in progress sideboard for this deck. I'll just cover that really quickly. I run 2 copies of Demon Lord's Armor. So put this into the soul of a Demon Lord at the beginning of each player's attack phase. If this card's in the soul of a Demon Lord, all of the opponent's cards get minus 2,000 power, minus 2,000 defense, and minus 1 crit. And then if this card is in the soul of a Demon Lord, it also gets Soul Guard, and the abilities of all Demon Lords can't be nullified. Next, I run 2 copies of Loyalty because it's loyalty. And then, again, its primary use is to stop your opponent from calling past their 3rd monster. Then 2 copies of Insanity Chevre. This is just another really good generic defense spell. Having 2 monsters as part of the condition is very easy to meet. And then you choose a monster that attacked, nullify the attack, and that monster can't stand. Same thing with Buddy Block, just a very powerful defense spell. You're really only going to be using it for its last option, which is if your opponent's attacks 4 or more times, you just stop taking damage from their attacks. And then lastly, I have some spice tech, which is Inverse Second Omni Lord Demon Lord Death Asmodai. So he is a size 3, he is a Demon Lord, and then he is also an Omni Lord, so you can only run one of it in any world that's not his own. But his call cost is pay 2 gauge. When this card is destroyed, put up to 3 cards from your deck into your drop zone, then call 3 monsters among them into separate areas without paying their call costs. And then he's got Penetrate and Lifelink. He's just a very solid Demon Lord, and then we do have some ways to destroy him if we want to use his effect, or if we put him in the center and they're forced to attack him, then he's just going to get destroyed anyway. And then as far as some other options of cards you could run in the deck, you could run Demon Lord Athora. So its call cost is put the top 2 cards of your deck into its soul and pay 2 gauge. Reduce the damage you take from effects from your opponent's cards by 1. And then monsters in your center and spells on your field can't be destroyed by card effects. You could also run Overturn Ice Emperor Miserea. Overturn Miserea is just a very powerful card in which he just resets the field. Next, you could run Reset Button. So Reset Button is just another way of gaining lots of gauge really quickly, especially if you're really low on gauge, because it will just reset your gauge back to 4. Another way of gaining gauge really quickly is with Kill Order. You're not really going to be using its last ability, which is to destroy a size 0 on your opponent's field, but what you're really going to be doing is put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. That's just by default, and then if your opponent has 2 or more cards in their gauge than yours, you just charge an additional 2 gauge. Then you could also run Demon Lord's Pet Cat Kate Sith. So if you have a total of 7 or more Fairy or Demon Lords in your drop zone, monsters on your field get +2 crit. When this card is destroyed, put the top 2 cards of your deck into your drop zone. So he's mostly there just to try to buff the field if the game prolongs long enough. You could also run the Impact Monster. Call cost is pay 3 gauge, put this card on top of a Demon Lord monster on your field. When this card enters the field, call up to 1 Demon Lord monster from your hand without paying its call cost. Size is reduced by 0 until it leaves, and then that card can also attack during the final phase. So this is just another way to get more attacks in, just to try to trigger Darkness Final Mission, or to just try to kill your opponent because you've already attacked so many times. And then lastly, you could run Great Spell Bifrost of Heaven and Earth. So you're just going to use this to draw cards. So what it does is you pay 1 gauge, choose up to one of the following 2. You can only cast this once per turn. Put an Asgard or dungeon enemy monster from your drop zone to your hand and gain 1 life. Can't really do that because we're not running any of those. But what we can do is draw a card and put all souls from a spell with set on your field to the drop zone. So this also combos with the Great Spell Apocalypse. So that's kind of the Demon Lord deck I've been playing with. I think they're a pretty fun and interesting deck. I don't necessarily think that this deck is going to be hyper competitive, but it is a halfway decent casual deck if you just want to sleeve up something and have a very fun time. And I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you like and subscribe for more Buddyfight content. As always, the deck list will be in the description below. Feel free to leave a like and comment if you want to engage in discussions on like how you would change the deck or what other decks you want to see. With that, I will see you in the next video.